A key part of making any major purchasing decision is doing research on what is going to make the best product for you. And if you're in the market for a new computer or even just an old computer to replace another old computer, you're probably going to run across the term operating system, or you're going to hear terms like Mac, Windows, Chromebook, and things like that. Today we're going to be talking about which one of these operating systems is going to suit your needs best and what you should know about purchasing a computer with a specific operating system on it. And today we're talking about Windows, Mac OS, Chrome OS, and then a little bit about Linux. The first question we need to answer is, what is an operating system? And the best way that I can think of an operating system is that it is a master app. It is the file management system. It runs things on your computer. So if you think of your computer as the actual hardware, your laptop is the actual physical thing that opens up like this, the operating system is the main app that runs all of the other apps. It's a little more complicated than that for sure. Actually, it's a lot more complicated than that, but that is the way that I like to think of it. All of your little apps that do specific things all tie back to your operating system and how your operating system functions. And different operating systems are better at different things. Windows is good at some things, Mac OS is good at other things, Chrome OS is good at some things as well. And so it's important to know what these things are good at in order to know which one's going to be the best for you. And let's go ahead and start out with Windows. Windows is developed by Microsoft. Bill Gates is the guy that founded all of that, and that is that big conglomerate, and that is what Windows is. Windows 11 is the current generation of Windows that you'll find, and Windows 10 is also one that's running congruently. Basically, if you're looking for a computer that is a Windows, look for Windows 10 or Windows 11. Those are going to be the most up-to-date systems that you can find out there that run Windows. Now, people might call me an Apple fanboy for saying this, but that's okay with me because I think of Windows as the Walmart of operating systems. Does it look the prettiest? No. Does it break down frequently and need fixing? Yeah, it kind of does, but there is almost nothing that Windows doesn't do. Everything that you'll need runs on Windows, practically. There are very few exceptions to that, but basically, if there is a major app that you need for work or for school or for play or for whatever it is that you're using the computer, Windows has it. And that makes it the safest bet for an operating system if you're looking to buy a new computer, right? Now, there are a couple of drawbacks to Windows as an operating system, and they are the following. The first one is frequent updates. Windows is kind of a bloated operating system, which means that it just has a lot of code that doesn't necessarily need to be there, and sometimes things break, which means that as Windows goes on, it needs frequent updates. So there are people coding over at Microsoft, updating things all the time. And once they come up with an update, which is like once a week, if not more than that, they will send it out to your computer. And then your computer will say, we need to install this update and we need to shut down your computer and restart it. That can get super annoying, especially if you're not one to, power down and then power up your computer in between uses. Most people I know just leave their computer on practically constantly. And if you do this, you're going to miss out on updates, and that comes with some security compromises, some security issues there, and it also just comes with your computer slowing down, getting bogged down, and eventually having errors and having programs and things on your computer break, right? And so that frequent update thing is kind of a problem, but not too much of a problem if you're willing to shut down your computer after every use. The other thing is that it is not the prettiest operating system out there. Now, Windows has come a long way from the butt ugly days of Windows XP. And you can fight me on that. That was an ugly operating system. I think that Windows 98 and Windows 2000 were way better looking than Windows XP, and everything has just gotten way better since. So you can fight me on that. I'm taking that to my grave, but it is not the prettiest operating system. And with that, Windows has so many features and so many things that it has on the operating system that each little piece is almost updated individually, which means that your main skin, what you log in and see on your Windows computer, is going to look one way. But if you were to, say, want to pull up your network settings and edit things that way, those features are designed and matched, very similar to Windows XP. And if you go even further into the operating system, things haven't really been updated design-wise since Windows 2000 or Windows 98. And so what this means is that you kind of have this hodgepodge of design with Windows as an operating system, right? That it looks one way and then you get into stuff and it looks a different way, and then you get further into stuff and it looks a different way, and it's not really a cohesive or even coherent design. And then the last thing is that things do break on Windows because of the rolling updates, because of how things change so frequently. If you don't have that upkeep, things do break pretty frequently on Windows. So I know that's very similar to number one, but in addition to having there be lots of updates, things also do break. And you're going to need to be involved in your computer to keeping it up to date if you have a Windows machine. So next, let's talk about Mac OS. There's a lot less to talk about Mac OS because it is a simpler, more bogged down, but also less feature-rich operating system than Mac OS. And all of the Apple fanboys can come at me there. It is just a simpler, less expansive operating system than Windows. Windows has far more customizability, and Mac, on the other hand, does have some really awesome things. For example, the design across all Mac devices is pretty consistent. If you pick up one Mac device, you know what all of the other Mac devices do. It's a very unified feel. It's a very consistent design language across all devices. So if you're buying an Apple product and you get another Apple product, it's really easy to use in tangent. And this is why the Apple ecosystem is such a big thing. You'll find as people buy Apple computers that they'll also have Apple phones, and that they'll have an iPad, and that they'll, have an Apple Watch. And it's because everything syncs so seamlessly, and also operating the systems are all very, very similar. But like Windows, Mac does have some drawbacks. I should say that there is a really, really core strength to Mac OS. Let's say you're in any artistic field, whether that's music or whether that's graphic design or whether that's photography or videography. Mac OS is used by all creative types far more than Windows is used, right? So even if you're a writer, if you're a photographer, a videographer, a graphic designer, a musician, whatever it is, your safest bet is going to be Mac OS, because even though most of the programs that creatives use can also run on Windows, the support system that you're going to find, the support group that you're going to find online when you're searching for answers to questions, is going to be more robust on Mac OS. And so it's going to be more compatible if you're just searching on a Mac device, right? And so if you're in a creative field, Mac OS is probably the best choice for you. But there are some drawbacks. First of all, it is insanely complicated to use Mac OS unless you have an Apple device. And I know that might seem kind of like, well, duh, Apple makes Mac OS, but there are ways of getting Mac OS onto PC computers, onto components that you can just purchase and use yourself. You can take Windows off and put Mac OS on, but that's really complicated. And the reason I bring this up is that means if you want to use Mac OS, you have to buy an Apple device. And Apple devices are not the cheapest devices. The cheapest laptop that you're going to find, even discounted, brand new from Windows or from Mac OS, from Apple, is going to be $900. $900 is what gets you a computer, and that's the entry point. If you want to get a really, really robust computer that can do all sorts of things that you need it to do, if you're a videographer or a graphic designer or something that requires a lot of color accuracy, is you need like a $2,000 computer from Apple. And that is a hefty price tag to pay, especially if you have other bills and you're a normal person that has a job that doesn't make them buttloads of money. So that is something to consider there, is that it's an expensive operating system to get into, right? It's very convenient once you have a lot of Apple devices, but if you don't have a lot of Apple devices, then it's really, really expensive to get into. The second is that Apple's obsession with making everything beautiful and totally functional before they ship means that there are fewer features on Apple than there are on Windows, right? Windows, as half-baked as they do so many things, they push features out like crazy, which is why there's nothing that doesn't exist on Windows, right? On Mac OS, that's a different story. Nothing is quite as customizable. Nothing is quite as feature-rich as Windows. Now, there are some unique features to Mac OS, but there aren't as many features on Mac OS. So that is the deal with Mac OS. The next one we're gonna wanna talk about is Chromebooks. Now, Chrome OS, there's not a lot to say here. If you're gonna get a Chromebook, it's going to essentially do one thing, and that is going to connect you to the internet. That was the purpose of Chromebooks. That's what they were designed for, is to essentially be a cheap computer that allows you to access the internet. And they haven't done a lot since then. Now, I do hear through the grapevine that Chromebooks will be more capable in the future, and you'll be able to, run a bunch of apps on them, and you'll be able to use them very similar to how you use a Mac or a Windows device. But right now, Chromebooks that run Chrome OS currently just have the internet. And even all of the apps that you download, they just launch a browser. And so they're really, really stripped down versions of a computer, right? If you plan on doing anything but browsing the web, you should look at getting something more than just a Chromebook. But they were cheap, and so they had this huge rise in popularity when COVID hit because everybody needed a computer and Chromebooks were super cheap. And so when you had 4 kids and you had 3 family computers, it meant that mom needed a computer, dad needed a computer, and you had to buy 3 more computers. And $3,000 was not something a lot of families wanted to spend on laptops. And so they got them all Chromebooks. And that's why they had this rise in popularity. And that's why you'll see them at Best Buy, you'll see them at Walmart, you'll see them pretty much anywhere that you shop for laptops. And that's why they're popular. But they are not high-powered machines, so you won't get a lot done on them. The last thing I want to mention is just Linux. You might come across this term, Linux. If you don't know much about it, odds are you probably shouldn't get this as your main computer, right? Linux is what's called open source software, which means that every line of code you can access by just going online and Googling it. You can just find all of the code for everything on your computer. Now, this is not super useful for most people, right? But if you're somebody who really likes to customize the environment, add features, or install an app that doesn't need to be there, and then like jerry-rig a whole bunch of things. If you're a tinkerer, Linux is really, really phenomenal for you because there is nothing that you can't do on Linux. If you want to change the way your background looks, well, that's just getting started. But it is an extremely hard operating system to learn. But it really lends itself to projects. So for example, if you wanted to install on your smart home, or if you wanted to install devices on your smart home and link them all together and and then say like a code word, you can cause a series of events to happen, and like your shower to start, and your lights to turn on in a certain room, and the house to heat up to a certain temperature. You can say all of that one word, and all of those things will happen if you code it through a Linux operating system, like a Raspberry Pi, which is a super cheap computer, right? But anyway, the point is it's a very, very complicated operating system because you have to know what you're doing. And then there aren't a lot of apps that are supported on Linux. Most apps that people use on Linux are also open source. So this means, for example, that if you wanted to use Excel in your work, right? That's what you did. You used a bunch of Google Sheets and things like, or you used a bunch of Excel documents and spreadsheets and stuff like that. You'd have to be able to learn what's called LibreCalc, which is an open source version of Excel. And it is way different. It is not the same at all. The point is you'd have to learn a lot in order to get to know and use Linux. So in conclusion, what does this mean? Should you get a Mac, or should you get a Windows laptop, or should you get a Chromebook, or should you install a Linux distribution? And the answer is, honestly, it's up to you. A safe bet is going to be Mac OS or Windows. Either one of those is going to be a really safe bet. There's almost all apps exist for both of those. And so you'll be able to be just fine with either of those. And if you're on a super tight budget and all you really need to do is on the internet, get a Chromebook. That'll be fine. Ultimately, it's up to you. There are ways to make what you have work. And if you're willing to spend the time, get familiar with your machine, and really learn the operating system, you can do pretty much anything with basically any computer as long as it is a powerful enough machine. But that's a topic for a different day. If you have any questions for me, leave them in the comment below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you later.